Well, welcome to the Stack of Stats podcast. I am your host, Pam Maldonado, joined by my college football partner in crime, Harry Gagnon of the Against All Odds podcast with Cousin Sal. And we are here to bring you our 7 against the spread college football and or NFL contest picks. Harry, my man, finally, we broke through our 4-3 curse. We had back-to-back weeks of 4-3. Finally pushed on through. We went 5-2. How are you feeling about our strategy going forward?
I'm feeling good. I like that. That's a great percentage, and we'll get to it in a little bit because one of our losses was Nebraska, correct?
Mm-hmm. It was.
And I have a little bit of the Nebraska-Minnesota game, something to say about that in a little bit with our picks. But again, Nebraska, I mean, whether you got them at 3.5, 3 or 2.5, it all depended. But boy, they should have covered that game.
It definitely should have. So that brings us 20-15 on the season. So let's see if we can keep it going. I don't want 5-2. I'm not satisfied. I want 7-0. I think you and I are 100% capable. Just to reiterate what it is that we are doing each week. We're in a contest, 7 against the spread picks, either in college football and or in the NFL. Harry shares with me his absolute can't lose top 3 picks. I share with him my best bet, my best 3, and together we decide our 7th. So let's take a look at your 3 best plays that you have for this week. You're alluding that you have you're either on or against Nebraska. Tell me why you're on Minnesota. The Minnesota Gophers at home +4 against Nebraska.
Yeah, I like always getting a home dog like this. And this is kind of sometimes spite bets win. And this is a spite bet kind of for me a little bit here too, because Nebraska really, they had the game in their hands at the end of the game. They gave it to Michigan. I liked what they did in terms of Adrian Martinez, but being able to pass the ball and get down the field. And they did a nice job in the second half after a really slow starting first half. But like I said, whether you got the 3.5 or the 2.5 or the 3, depending on how you covered. But I really think that was the game they needed to have. They still lost the game at home. Scott Frost needed a signature win there. He's been in a lot of trouble and hasn't been what people expected in Lincoln coming from Central Florida. So I think by losing that Michigan game, it's going to be a letdown situation for them after giving it all they had in that game. Minnesota.
They shut out Colorado. They looked like they were trying to get back to what they used to be in Minnesota.
Yep.
Wins 30-0 on the road. But then they followed that up with a 14-10 loss to Bowling Green. How are you so confident in Minnesota?
Well, I mean, again, their quarterback situation there, again, a couple of years ago, a lot better than it is now. But I have confidence in Minnesota. I just don't – it's more of a thing where I think Minnesota played tough a couple of weeks ago too. They got us in that game when we had them against – we had Purdue against Minnesota, and Minnesota pulled the game out. So they won. And that was an impressive win for them too against a decent Purdue team. And again, Mohamed Ibrahim, their best running back, who had a great season last year, went out in the first game of the season against Ohio State. And I thought that might have been a situation where Minnesota may have just packed it in. Not so much. They're still playing tough. Like I said, they had that last couple wins. So I'm going to go against Nebraska here. I'm taking Minnesota at home as a dog, more than a field goal. Maybe Nebraska pulls this out for Frost. They win this game by 3, but I'm liking the +4.
Let's row that boat. The other game that you like is you're taking Mississippi State. I'm starting to see a trend here. You are fading the letdown spots. These are letdown spots from last week. They let down last week. They're going to let down this week. Mississippi State +17 at home to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Talk about the biggest upset of the season. Alabama dropped a loss to Texas A&M. Back-to-back games on the road. Alabama looks human. It had a narrow 31-29 win at Florida as 14-point favorites. And then, of course, follow that up with an outright loss to the Aggies as 19-point favorites, both on the road. So, yeah, I agree with this one. Prove to me that you can cover spreads on the road, but let me hear your reason.
Look, let the cowbells ring in Starkville. I mean, this Alabama defense is soft. I mean, teams are ripping right through them. I mean, they can score, no doubt about it. But I'm going to take Mississippi State with the points here. Again, like we said a couple of weeks ago, too, Bama also could have lost to Florida. They gave up 250 yards on the ground in that game. And Mississippi State, like we just mentioned, Alabama lost in the upset of the year so far to A&M. Mississippi State beat A&M this year. And then just their 2 losses, Mississippi State lost by a total of just 7 points. Getting 17 here at home, Bama, I know it's a bounce back game for them. Maybe let's see what they do offensively, especially with Young. But I think they're still with a quarterback like him. I think it's too many points with 17.
Let me side pivot with you really quickly. What do you think about Bryce Young still co-lead for the Heisman?
Yeah, he's still there, but it still wasn't that with the loss. I mean, if they would have pulled that game out, then they still clear Heisman at winner at that point. But still, with losing that game, it's still up in the air. And Corral's numbers had a good game against Arkansas last week. Mm-hmm. He's a good runner too. He runs more than Young does too. So right now, I know they're still neck and neck. I still like Corral.
All right. Well, then the third game that you like is a favorite. You are taking Arkansas Razorbacks -4 at home to Auburn. I don't dislike this. Fade Bo Nix on the road, except Bo Nix did actually upset LSU on the road a couple of weeks ago. So are we seeing a better version of Bo Nix on the road this season?
Nah, big deal. LSU's not that good. Their defense is weak. And you know what? Arkansas has been pretty good. Bo Nix and Auburn, look, I thought they would actually get the cover last week against Georgia. I think maybe he'd play tough. Mm-hmm. They didn't get it done. Arkansas played Mississippi very tough. They got that late touchdown to get the cover. Arkansas's offense too. I think they put up a lot of points in most of the games except for the Georgia game. And Auburn struggled at times this season. And Bo Nix just like 6 touchdowns this season. Just doesn't get it done for Auburn. Just hadn't played big games. And Arkansas, it's been very, very good the last couple of years. I like Arkansas with the points here. I think they are the team that should probably be favored by 2 points, not getting 4.
Absolutely. Well, Arkansas is -4 at home.
Or -4, right.
Yeah, -4
right,
at home.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So the 3 games that you like is Minnesota +4 at home to Nebraska, Mississippi State +17 at home to Alabama, and Arkansas -4 at home to Auburn. My next 3, they're kind of ugly ones, and people are gonna be like, "What?" But you got to roll with them. I'm aiming for 7-0. I'm going for the teams that nobody's gonna pay attention to. UCF +21 at Cincinnati. How am I wrong? The Knights, they clearly are not the same team without quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Absolutely, I'll 100% agree with that. But in 2 games without him, UCF is 1-1. They lost 34-30 to Navy. They lost 20-16. They won 20-16 to East Carolina. Last year's spread was the Bearcats -4. And now you're 21-point favorites. I'm still believing that the 2020 Bearcats were a much better team on defense and on offense than the 2021 Bearcats. UCF is now no longer pass heavy. They're a run first team. They do still have playmakers. They have 3 running backs that can keep this game closer, run the ball, run the clock. UCF on the road +21 in a huge overreaction to Cincinnati to get to winning against Notre Dame, who had quarterback injuries in that matchup. If they had a healthy quarterback like 1 week earlier, it possibly could have been a different outcome. But because they beat the Notre Dame brand, they're getting too much here.
You don't like the Cincinnati team.
I loved Cincinnati last year. I was a huge advocate for Cincinnati being in the playoff last year. I absolutely was. I 100% believe they could have. They were just stomping the most potent offenses in every single game. This year, they're not the same. Prove to me you're the same. And that stretch is going to come at the end of the season. It's not here yet.
Look, I will say this. Central Florida hasn't lost by double digits since 2016, and they are getting 3 touchdowns.
And they are getting 3 touchdowns. And why I like the 21 is because the opening line on this was 20. And now you're giving me a full 3. Yes, I will take the better number. UCF +21 in Cincinnati. And second game that I like is UTSA Roadrunners -18.5 at home to Rice. Rice, they're 122nd in total offense. They're 97th in total defense. UTSA is a top 10 in defending the run, and the Roadrunners are top 25 in total offense, top 30 in offensive touchdowns. The Roadrunners, they know how to score, and Rice is bottom 10 in opponent touchdowns allowed. I think UTSA running back Sincere McCormick, they're just going to run all over this Rice team. We saw what the Longhorns did to them. Absolutely demolish, shut them out. I think UTSA, though not as potent, of course, that's not what I'm saying, as the Longhorns, fully capable of just running up 40 plus points up on Rice.
Look, I can't disagree with you because you liked UTSA last week. That was a nice one. And Rice is pathetic. I mean, Rice has 1-2 in a row, actually, but they are really, but you look at the numbers, they just get trounced statistically, especially offensively. Can't disagree with you with the Roadrunners. Nailed it last week, so let's roll them again.
Roll with them
And
again.
they're undefeated.
Yeah, absolutely. UTSA, they are undefeated. Let's keep that train going. Sincere McCormick, run all over this team. Hawaii, 14 plus 14 and a half at Nevada. I like this one. Nevada, they are a top 40 rushing defense, 107th in passing yards allowed. So you can see the discrepancy. They are a good run defense. They're a good run defense. They're not a good passing defense. Bottom half in opponent touchdowns allowed. Hawaii, they've already faced a high powered passing team, defeating Fresno State. They're third in passing yards, 27. Who is third in passing yards? 27 to 24. That was just a couple weeks ago. And what is Hawaii's strength? They're 90th in total defense. That doesn't sound good, but they are tied fifth best in takeaways. If you are a pass first team, you are always going to be vulnerable to throwing interceptions against a top tier team in takeaways.
I like that. Hawaii, look, they have won 2 in a row. And that they did upset Fresno 2 weeks ago. Normally I would say I wouldn't like them this week because they have let down, but they have had, that was 2 weeks ago. So they've had to buy to think about it and be prepared for Nevada's quarterback, Carson Strong. By the way, Carson Strong's numbers are pretty impressive. 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 picks. So it's a little risky going against him in Reno with Hawaii having to travel. But getting 2 touchdowns and the way Hawaii's played lately and getting prepared for Strong, then should be a closer game than people think.
So then those are the 3 games that I like. UCF plus 21 at Cincinnati, UTSA minus 18 and a half at home to Rice, and then Hawaii plus 14 and a half at Nevada. So then we need to come up with our 7th pick. We have some options up on the board. You said in a text, Pam, come up with it. I want us to come with it. I need us to agree. That is how we get to 7-0 is if we both agree. So some of the options that I laid out was Syracuse plus 13 and a half at home to Clemson, which is a Friday night game. Briefly on this one, Clemson sucks. Their offense is just terrible. You can't score, can't put up points. They have a great defense, absolutely. But guess what? So does Syracuse. They're decent enough to keep this game close. Their offense is good enough to keep this close. I think Clemson is like, they're tinkering right there with getting an upset. They almost lost to Boston College. We were on Boston College. Could have had that outright win. Syracuse plus 13 and a half to a Clemson team that is still getting points for being a Clemson name, but not having the same Clemson playmaking abilities. What do you think about Syracuse?
Yeah, you're right. A couple of weeks ago, we had Boston College over Clemson. That was a winner for us in one of our picks. We've talked about Sean Tucker, the running back for Syracuse this year too. 800 yards, averaging 6 yards a carry, 9 touchdowns. Been very impressive. The 3 losses by Syracuse, only by a total of 16 points, which makes me like the points more here in the spot too. But the only thing I'm a little concerned about, and we'll get into a couple other ones here. The only thing of the games, what I'm concerned about is Syracuse actually has lost back-to-back games by 3 points in both. Lost at the buzzer in overtime against Wake Forest last week. So losing back-to-back games by 3. Clemson not covering in quite some time. This is a game that I do like Syracuse for the points here because you mentioned Clemson just can't score, but I'm a little concerned about the back-to-back where their heads will be after this.
Okay, well, then another option that we have is Purdue plus 12 at Iowa. Iowa, what makes Iowa defense so good is they're the best team in the nation for takeaways. Well, their leading defensive back, Riley Moss, he is out for at least a few weeks from injury. So he leads the team in interceptions with 4. He's tied for 3rd in the country for interceptions. He's tied for 1st, I believe, in the country for interceptions taken away. Well, now they're without him. So this defense is not going to be as strong. And now your offense, we know your offense can't score, potentially could have lost last week. That should have been a loss to Penn State if Sean Clifford didn't get out of that game from injury. So now Purdue, they are a tough team. Purdue's defense is actually top 15, top 20 defense in the country. And now you're facing Iowa that doesn't have much of an offense. 12 points sounds just like too much when your best defensive player is out and knowing that your offense can't score.
Maybe so, but boy, this Iowa team just still impresses me every single week. They just get it done. They win these games. They grind it out.
They find ways.
The greatest stuff offensively, but they're just a solid team. And I don't think I can take Purdue here just because Purdue's offense, very lackluster. Actually pretty bad considering the last 3 games. Last 3 games, they scored 13 points in all of them. That's not going to do it against an Iowa Hawkeye team that just at any time can explode. Don't really love this game. But again, Iowa just impressed me so much this year, and I've been on the other side sometimes. So I like to stay away from the games.
No, that works for me because also Purdue, we don't know what quarterback they are going to get because they're alternating between quarterbacks right now. One of them has thrown 0 interceptions. They switched from him and went to somebody who's thrown 5 interceptions. Tell me who's the one that should be starting.
Yeah. And Petrus for Iowa doesn't put up huge numbers quarterback wise, but he gets it done.
Absolutely. So another game that we like that I have listed as an option is North Texas +11 at home to Marshall. Keep fading Marshall until they prove that they can cover spreads. The Thundering Herd, they can't cover. They are 2-4 against the spread this season. They are 1-4 against the spread as a favorite. In week 3, they lost 42-38 as 9.5 point favorites. They lost in week 5, 34-28 as 10-point favorites. And just last week, they won 20-13 as 20-point favorites to Old Dominion in overtime. I don't care who you are, what team it is, fade until you prove that you can cover a spread, much less a double-digit spread. And the reason why they are doing so poorly and having these outright losses is because they are the last team. They are second worst team for giveaways, fumbles, interceptions, you name it. They have it multiple each game. In those 3 games that I listed alone, they had 11 turnovers, and that's what's helping teams stay in the games. What do you think about fading Marshall?
Tough conference to bet on. I mean, we had that game that you mentioned, the 42-38 before. We were covering that game late, 42. I think it was 42-24 at the time that we had it, or something like that, 42-21. We were laying 10 with Marshall, and they give up a couple late touchdowns, win by 4 when we're laying 10, when we're up 17 in the fourth, something like that. Tough team to take, tough conference to bet overall. North Texas, lost 4 in a row, 3 by double digits. So they're no good. Taking Marshall seems like the play here, but overall, like you just mentioned, they can't cover it. I just don't like the game.
All righty, then we'll go ahead and skip out on that. So far, we have an option of Syracuse +13.5. There's 2 on the board that you like. Arizona +6 at Colorado. Miami +7 at UNC. Let's talk about those. What's going on?
Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy to say, but and I know you kind of look at it a little bit too, is to take the Wildcats of Arizona +6 at Colorado. Look, Colorado's god awful too. I mean, the only reason why they're -6 is because they're home. Otherwise, if Arizona's home, they'd probably be a 6-point favorite in the spot too. I know Arizona lost to Northern Arizona, one of their worst losses probably in school history, but Colorado is awful. The last 3 games, they've been outscored by 76 points. Arizona at least covered this year against BYU and covered in Eugene against Oregon. This is crazy for a team to be in the 5th, 6th games of the season. Colorado's leading receiver on the team doesn't have 100 yards yet. They don't have a guy. They don't have a player. They don't have a player that has 10 receptions on the team. I mean, they're just getting trounced lately, and I think for them to be laying anything is insane. And like I said, Arizona, at least after that Northern Arizona loss at home in Tucson, they've shown a little bit something. They've been playing tougher. I think +6 is a great play here, and I even think the money line is worth the play.
This is a very winnable game. Colorado, 130th in total offense, 82nd in total defense. I don't dislike that at all, unless we know that Arizona, they're fighting. They need a win under the belt. This is probably the only winnable game that they have on their schedule. The other game that you like is Miami +7 at North Carolina. Tell me about that one.
Yeah, you know what?
They don't have De'Aaron King. So then how are you backing a team that doesn't have a quarterback?
That makes it very difficult, but I mean, and I know they got trounced by North Carolina last year, like 62-26. But this North Carolina team, I don't know where their heads are at. Not the same. Sam Howell's not the same. I think Sam Howell, boy, and what a season from the past 2 seasons. He had 68 touchdowns past 2 seasons. And this year's been just such a disappointment for the Tar Heels. I think he's lost a lot of draft spots in this. I think he's lost a lot of money staying around in North Carolina, right? And Mac Brown needs that. Your guy, Mac Brown, kind of has to
be broken up.
I mean, it's just not a good fit right now. They don't look good. No De'Aaron King. That's an issue, but getting 7 on the road, maybe it seems like a small number here to me. So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards the Hurricanes. And I don't know where UNC's heads are at.
All right. So then I can't do Miami only because they don't have a quarterback. I don't
Sure.
want to mess with that at all. North Texas makes sense. Marshall looks like the play, but until you can prove otherwise. And then Purdue, 100%. I love Iowa. I have them in a futures market in multiple ways. Yes, they can just turn it on even without their defensive back. So let's choose then between Syracuse plus 13.5 at home to Clemson, who Clemson has not won a game by more than 6 points. Or let's take a road team in Arizona plus 6 at Colorado, who, why are you favorites?
Well, like last week, you put it on my shoulders. You let me pick the 7th game. I came up with the Buffalo Bills. That was a nice one.
The pressure.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, we're 2. Not only we are 2-0 in the NFL, 2-0. Not only 2-0 in the NFL, 2-0 betting against Kansas City in Arrowhead. But I will. I like Arizona in the spot, but they are a bad team. But so isn't Colorado. But I'll let you pick this one. You pick it. It's either Arizona or Syracuse.
Okay, I think you have to go with Syracuse, who at least is covering spreads. They're not winning their games, but they are covering as underdogs. Clemson is not covering. They're barely squeaking by with wins. In Arizona, we faded them last week as 16.5-point dogs. So now this is a much smaller spread. I don't know. I'm feeling Syracuse this week. I think it can definitely happen. I think I like Syracuse enough that they can come out with an outright win themselves.
And like we said, over the past couple of years, they've had some battles with Clemson. And Sean Tucker is the star on that team. He can dominate a team. He can dominate the run game. Why not? Because again, Clemson they can't double-digit favorites again, and they can't cover.
All right. Well, then let's go with Syracuse and let's roll the dice and hope that is it. And those are 7 against the spread picks. We're going to go with Minnesota plus 4 at home to Nebraska, Mississippi State plus 17 at home to Alabama, Arkansas minus 4 at home to Auburn, UCF plus 21 on the road at Cincinnati, UTSA Roadrunners minus 18.5 at home to Rice, and then Hawaii plus 14.5 at Nevada. And our 7th pick, we are rolling with Syracuse plus 13.5 at home to Clemson. Those are our 7 against the spread picks for college football. Do make sure to check out Harry's work on bestbetcorner.com and extrapoints.com and on the Against All Odds podcast with Cousin Sal. You can follow him on Twitter at AAOHarry. You can follow me on Twitter at Pamela M35. Harry, my man, thank you for joining me once again. I can't wait to do it next week when I get to celebrate with you a 7-0 week.
Let's do it. Hey, Pam, we're getting over 500 every week. We're rocking.
Every week.
Let's keep it up. A little bit more. Okay, thanks.
That does it for another college football podcast on Stack of Stats.